On the morning of June 6, 1944, the small French town of Luckenow, near Bordeaux, was engulfed in an uneasy silence. The Allied invasion of Normandy, known as D-Day, had begun with a massive assault on the beaches. Our unit, the Indian Legion, was stationed in Luckenow as part of the German defense in southwestern France. We had received orders to stay vigilant and prepared for any potential Allied movements, but the immediate impact of the invasion was distant from our location. June 20th, 1944, new orders and increased patrols. By late June, it was clear that the Allies were making significant advances across France. On June 20th, our command received new orders to intensify our patrols and secure the Luckenow area against any signs of French resistance. The Germans feared that the resistance could become more active in response to the Allied invasion. Our task was to suppress any resistance activities and maintain order in the region. July 5th, 1944, raids and resistance suppression. On July 5th, we conducted a major raid on several villages around Luckenow suspected of harboring resistance fighters. The operation was thorough, involving house-to-house searches and aggressive interrogations. We detained numerous civilians, many of whom were believed to have connections with the resistance. It was a difficult and often brutal process, as we were instructed to extract any information that might lead to identifying and capturing resistance members. July 15th, 1944, increased tensions. The pressure of the ongoing war began to weigh heavily on both the local population and our troops. By July 15th, the atmosphere in Luckenow was tense. The resistance had become increasingly active, and there were frequent skirmishes between our patrols and resistance fighters. We faced growing resentment from the local people who were caught in the crossfire. The situation was exacerbated by shortages of supplies and the harsh measures we had to enforce. August 1st, 1944, preparing for possible withdrawal. As August approached, the situation in Luckenow continued to deteriorate. Reports of Allied advances in other regions increased the pressure on our position. On August 1st, we received orders to prepare for a possible withdrawal. The German command anticipated that the Allies might push further into southern France, making it crucial for us to be ready to retreat if necessary. August 10th, 1944, final operations. On August 10th, our final operations in Luckenow were focused on securing sensitive materials and ensuring that all strategic positions were fortified. We continued to conduct patrols and searches, but the mood among the troops was one of increasing apprehension. The realization that we might soon have to leave the town added to the strain. August 20th, 1944, evacuation and departure. By August 20th, our evacuation orders were in full effect. The Indian Legion, alongside other German units, began to withdraw from Luckenow. The local residents, who had endured months of harsh treatment and repression, watched as we left. The evacuation was conducted swiftly, with our focus on ensuring that no valuable equipment or documents were left behind. The departure marked the end of our assignment in Luckenow. The town, once under tight German control, was now left to deal with the aftermath of occupation and the ongoing conflict. The experience was a challenging chapter for the Indian Legion and the people of Luckenow, reflecting the broader struggles of World War II. August 21st, 1944, arrival of new command. The day after our departure from Luckenow was filled with tension as we arrived at our new position further inland. The small town had been a crucial site, and our retreat from it signaled a significant shift in the German strategy in southwestern France. As we settled into our new quarters, the reality of the retreat began to sink in. The arrival of a new command unit brought fresh directives and a renewed focus on stabilizing our position and preparing for the next phase of the conflict. August 25th, 1944, reorganization and strategy. By August 25th, we were engaged in reorganizing our units and strategizing our next moves. The loss of Luckenow was a blow, but the new command emphasized the need to fortify our defenses and resist the Allied advance. Our new orders were clear we needed to hold our ground and slow the Allies' progress as much as possible. This involved setting up defensive positions and reinforcing supply lines. September 1st, 1944 local resistance and conflict. September 1st saw an increase in local resistance activities in our new area. The French resistance had been emboldened by the Allied advances and was now more aggressive in targeting German forces. We faced several skirmishes, and our patrols were often met with ambushes. The locals, who had previously been under tight control, were now more openly defiant, making our mission even more challenging. September 10th, 1944 supply issues and morale. By September 10th, supply issues began to take their toll on our morale. The ongoing conflict had strained our resources, and it became increasingly difficult to secure the necessary provisions for our troops. The scarcity of supplies, combined with the constant threat of attacks, created a stressful environment. The soldiers' spirits were tested as they faced the dual pressures of combat and logistical challenges. September 15th, 1944 increased Allied pressure. The pressure from Allied forces intensified as September progressed. Our new location, though strategically chosen, was increasingly under threat. On September 15th, we experienced a significant Allied push, with heavy artillery and airstrikes targeting our defensive positions. The battle was fierce, and the realization that we were in a precarious situation became more apparent. September 20th, 1944 tactical retreat. By September 20th, the situation had reached a critical point. The Allied forces had made considerable advances, and our defensive lines were at risk of being overrun. Faced with the imminent possibility of encirclement, we were ordered to execute a tactical retreat. The decision was difficult but necessary to preserve our forces and avoid total destruction. September 25th, 1944 withdrawal and reflection. The final days of September were marked by the withdrawal from our position. As we pulled back, there was a sense of reflection and resignation among the troops. The retreat from Lucknow and the subsequent struggle had been arduous. The soldiers were weary, and the weight of the retreat was a heavy burden. The constant pressure from the Allies and the logistical difficulties had taken a toll on everyone involved. October 1st, 1944 new orders and preparations. By October 1st, we had relocated to a new defensive line further east. The focus was now on regrouping and preparing for the next phase of the conflict. The new orders emphasized the need to stabilize our positions and be ready for further engagements with the advancing Allied forces. The situation was far from ideal, but the resolve to continue the fight remained strong. October 5th, 1944, reflecting on Lucknow. As we settled into our new position, there were moments of reflection on our time in Lucknow. The challenges we faced there were a stark reminder of the broader conflict and the high stakes involved. The experiences in Lucknow, from the initial control to the eventual retreat, were etched into the memories of those who served there. The battle for Lucknow was a significant chapter in the larger narrative of the war, and its impact continued to be felt as we moved forward. October 10th, 1944 new beginnings. As October began, the Indian Legion faced a new chapter in their fight against the Allies. After retreating from Lucknow, we were stationed in a fortified position near the town of Montargis, about 100 kilometers east. The landscape here was different, more rugged and less accommodating, but it provided natural defensive advantages that we hoped would help us hold our ground. October 15th, 1944 strengthening defenses. By mid-October, our primary focus was on fortifying our new position. The terrain presented challenges, but it also offered opportunities for creating strong defensive positions. We dug trenches, set up barbed wire, and placed landmines. The goal was to make it as difficult as possible for the Allies to advance further into our territory. The work was exhausting, but there was a sense of purpose in preparing for what was to come. October 20th, 1944, Allied reconnaissance. On October 20th, Allied reconnaissance units began probing our defenses. Small skirmishes erupted as they tested our positions and gathered intelligence. We could see their patrols moving in the distance, and the constant threat of a larger attack loomed over us. The tension was palpable among the troops, knowing that a significant engagement could be imminent. October 25th, 1944, the first major offensive. Our fears were confirmed on October 25th, when the Allies launched a major offensive against our position. The bombardment began early in the morning, with artillery shells raining down on our defenses. The intensity of the attack was overwhelming, and we could see the Allied tanks and infantry advancing through the smoke and debris. The battle was fierce, and we fought desperately to hold our lines. October 30th, 1944 counterattacks and stalemate. As the days progressed, the fighting continued unabated. We mounted several counterattacks in an attempt to push back the Allied forces, but their advance was relentless. The battle turned into a grueling stalemate, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The constant combat took a heavy toll on the soldiers, both physically and mentally. November 5th, 1944 supply crisis. By early November, the strain of the ongoing battle began to affect our supply lines. We were running low on ammunition, food, and medical supplies. The supply crisis made the situation even more challenging, as we had to ration our resources and make do with what little we had. The lack of supplies compounded the difficulties we were facing on the battlefield. November 10th, 1944, reinforcements arrive. On November 10th, we received much-needed reinforcements. Fresh troops and supplies arrived, bringing a sense of relief and renewed energy to our position. The reinforcements bolstered our defenses and provided much-needed relief for the weary soldiers. We were able to launch a series of coordinated counterattacks, regaining some of the lost ground and pushing the Allies back. November 15th, 1944 negotiations and new orders. As the month progressed, there were signs that negotiations were taking place at higher levels. The German command issued new orders, which included adjustments to our defensive strategies and the potential for further retreats if necessary. The uncertainty of the situation was unsettling, but the new orders were clear: hold our position as long as possible and be prepared for any eventuality. November 20th, 1944 reflections and realizations. By November 20th, the battle had settled into a tense equilibrium. The fighting continued, but there was a growing sense of reflection among the troops. The reality of the war's progress was becoming clearer, and the toll it had taken on us was evident. We had fought bravely, but the situation was increasingly difficult. The battles in Montargis were a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the Eastern Front and the broader conflict. November 30th, 1944, preparing for winter. As November drew to a close, we began preparing for the harsh winter months ahead. The cold and harsh weather conditions would add another layer of difficulty to an already challenging situation. We worked to improve our winter defenses and make necessary adjustments to our equipment and supplies. The coming months would be tough, but we were determined to hold our ground as long as possible.